Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you all to our first screencast of our summer assignment, and I also want to welcome you to AP US History in general. So I'm one of the AP US History teachers. My name is Mr. Palladino. There are also two other AP teachers. So you have Ms. Frankie, and you also have Mr. DeFava. So one of the three of us will be your teacher when you come to school in September. So for our summer assignment, we decided to create these videos to kind of help you along with the first chapter of the textbook. So you should be watching these screencasts after you've already read the first chapter. So you should have read the first chapter, taken notes on the first chapter, and this is to kind of give you a little bit better insight into what's going on and what they're talking about, really with Native American culture and the first meetings of the Europeans and the Native Americans. Okay? So there's probably going to be about 4 screencasts total, so this will be our first of 4 screencasts. So as you watch, we'll do this throughout the year for those of you who end up in my class. Probably get a screencast probably once a week. You're just going to kind of take notes as you would as if you're sitting in class, taking notes in class. Okay? All right, so we'll jump right into it. Today our topic is going to be kind of a broad overview of Native American, American Indian culture. So your textbook goes kind of regionally and geographically, and our next screencast will take a look at that. But we're going to take a look at big commonalities, because you have to understand that the American Indian culture and their view of the world is very different than the European view of the world. And that's key to understanding how they misunderstand one another when they first interact. Okay? So we're really taking a snapshot at American Indian culture pre-Columbus, and kind of when the Europeans get here, they still kind of retain this same culture. So the first idea we're going to take a look at is the concept of land in Native American society and Native American culture. And this is true for almost, you could say this is true for almost all of the different Native American tribes. There's always exceptions, but we're going to kind of look at it in a broad sense today, and then tomorrow we'll narrow it down geographically and by tribe and the differences that they have. So the first thing that you want to understand, what you're looking at here is actually a recreation of Manhattan Island. What they think it would have looked like before the first explorers got here. So before, some of your major explorers like Verrazano and these Henry Hudson came up the Hudson River, in the 1600s. They believe that this is what Manhattan would have looked like under pure Native American control. Now, the Native Americans that lived on Manhattan Island were called the Manahatta Indians. And they're typical of a lot of American Indian tribes. So the first thing you want to understand a bit is about the concept of land. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard the famous story that that the Dutch bought Manhattan from the Manahatta Indians for $24. Now, the story is true to a certain extent, but it also underneath it shows you the difference in the view of land that the Native Americans had and the Europeans had. And this is a key concept that goes throughout American history. You have to understand this concept of land and the European view and Native American view to understand how they interact with one another. The Native Americans have no concept of private property ownership. They don't believe that an individual can own property. It's something that's completely foreign to them. The best example I can give to you would be if somebody offered to sell you air. You would look at them and think that they were totally crazy. It doesn't make sense. Air is for everyone. Anybody can breathe the air. Anybody can use the air whenever they want. That's exactly how Native Americans viewed land ownership. Land is not to be owned individually. They do have a concept of tribal ownership of land. So when you think of Native Americans, the tribe can have a territory. The tribe itself can own the land. So the Manahatta Indians can control land. The Iroquois can control land. The Algonquins can control land. The Cherokees can control land. But you as an individual Cherokee, you as an individual Iroquois, you do not have your own piece of land that you can buy and sell individually. Okay? And so this is a key idea and a key understanding. They don't divide their land up into individual plots of land like the Europeans. Like the Europeans will divide their land up amongst their people and they'll each have a farm. The Native Americans don't believe in that idea and they don't believe in that concept. And so that's the first key thing to understand about Native American society and their use of land. The second thing to understand about their use of land is, this is specific to tribes, certain tribes, but how they actually use the land versus the Europeans. The Native Americans will not necessarily set up permanent farming throughout their land. What they'll do is they'll usually, let's say for example, farm in an area, grow some crops, and then they'll let it return to its natural state, and they'll move to another area and do farming somewhere else. So they're constantly moving within their territory. So both of these ideas about land will cause tension between the Europeans and the Native Americans. And it's a totally different mindset, a totally different understanding. So when you think about this, just remember, Native Americans do not believe in private property. They do not believe in individual land ownership. The Europeans fundamentally do. Think about it. John Locke from the Enlightenment, a famous Enlightenment thinker of European society, said, every person is born with the right to life, liberty, and property. Okay, so Thomas Jefferson changes that, and he says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But John Locke said life, liberty, and property. So each person gets a chance to own land. Native Americans believe in collective land ownership, tribal land ownership, and using that land kind of in a more communal way and a less destructive way and a less kind of hierarchical way than the Europeans would. So the second big thing to know about Native American society in general is their key religious beliefs. So the Native Americans, again, have a very different mindset than, say, the Western society, than the Europeans and the Asians, a lot of the Asian societies too. So we would consider most Native American religious groups to be a form of animism. So you learned about animism back in the 9th grade in global studies. And animism is this belief that, basically everything within society has a spirit. So the Native Americans, when you look at their religious beliefs, they believe that they are kind of a part of what they would call a great spirit. Okay, and every living thing, every person is a part of this great spirit, and every other living thing is also a part of this great spirit. So that includes the trees, that includes the animals. And so they kind of believe that nature is to be respected because they're just one of these creatures that's a part of this web of nature. And, they're within this whole system. They're not above the system. And that's important to understand. When you look at European society, and you look at the monotheistic religions, and specifically Christianity, there is a hierarchy. Man is above other parts of nature. In Native American society, they're a part of it. They're not above it, okay? And they all kind of have a linked spirit. So they do kind of feel a linked connection with animals. And that's why you'll see this reverence for animals. When they do go hunting, they do take from nature, but there's always this sense of respect, not taking more than you can use. So there's no sense of taking more to sell and to sell to other people. It's more we take what we need, and then you have to kind of give back to nature in a sense, because in certain ways you're equal. You're equal with the other creatures. You're equal with the other animals and the plant life and everything that's involved in nature. So it's a different concept than, say, European monotheistic religion. Now, important things to understand about so that's their basic idea of how they fit in nature and kind of where they fit in society. Now, important things to understand about them. Most Native American religions, it varies by region, but most Native American religions are polytheistic. Okay, so they believe in many different gods, akin to a lot of early religions that you may have learned in global history, like the sun god, god of rain. All these different kinds of nature-based gods is kind of where they're coming from. Uh, Important things to understand that they do not have in basically all of their religions. First of all, they have no places of worship. So there's no place to go, like set place, a church or a mosque or a synagogue. They have no place of worship. They also don't have holy books. Okay? Now, think of that and think of that through a European's mindset. When they encounter the Native Americans, what might they think of them? With no holy book, with no place of worship, with no necessarily distinguishable hierarchy of priests. In certain cases, they do have hierarchy of priests. In certain cases, they don't. So a lot of Europeans will look at this and say, well, they don't have religion at all. They're heathens. They have no religion. They have no faith. And on top of that, if they do recognize their faith, it's polytheistic. It's not monotheistic. And so it's a totally different mindset. And just in case you guys don't know, polytheistic means there's multiple gods. They believe in multiple gods. Monotheistic means that they believe in only one God. So the Native Americans are, traditionally would be polytheistic religions. All right, the third important thing to understand here about Native American society in the broad sense is that they're a part of what we would call a tribal system. Okay, now you're looking at a map of what becomes the United States later on, and there's thousands upon thousands of tribes here in North America. Each tribe has its own distinct customs, its own distinct languages, and its own distinct loyalties. And so they're not really unified in any way, shape, or form. So geography, we're going to talk about this tomorrow in our next screencast. Geography plays a role in where what kind of tribal system is set up. But even within that, there's hundreds and thousands, even within certain geographic areas, of different tribes. We'll focus on the major ones. You can't focus on everybody. We'll focus on the big tribes. But this is important to understand as far as, again, with Europeans. They have their own rivalries amongst one another that have been going on for hundreds and thousands of years. And, the Europeans kind of jump into this system. And so in certain cases, they can play one tribe off the other because there's animosity between tribes. The Native Americans do try to unify themselves in certain cases. For the most part, it's unsuccessful. Try and unify and stop the European conquest of North America and South America, for that matter. But this is an important thing to understand about the natives, that they have very strong tribal loyalties. And tribes, in its essence, are basically familial-based societies with large extended families. And you have kind of this connection between your tribe or your clan. And you've seen this in other global societies that you've talked about. They were prevalent in African society for a long, long time. They're prevalent in Asian society for a long time. And so these systems, they were there. In European society, this tribal system kind of dies away. And it's replaced first by kind of like your city-state system, like a smaller version of a country. And then by the time that the Europeans are coming to the New World, they're in the nation-state form, which is what we currently have in the world, which are bigger, larger countries. Okay, so the tribal states they're smaller. Some of them create empires, like the Iroquois are famous for creating empire up in upstate New York, but they're smaller based, ways of organizing society. Okay, the last thing we're just going to take a look at is gender roles. So this again is another thing that the Europeans and the Native Americans have very different concepts about what is the proper role of men and women. Okay, and again, this also varies by geographic region, what men and women are going to do in Native American society. When you first look at this, women have a more expanded role in Native American society. In those Native American societies that do practice farming, women are going to be the primary people who do the farming. Men will be the people who go out and hunt and fish, and women are going to be practicing farming. In certain Native American societies, you even have more equality as far as leadership is concerned. So a couple vocabulary words you want to be aware of. Something called a patriarchal society and a matriarchal society. A patriarchal society means it's a male-dominated society. A matriarchal society means it's a female-dominated society. And what we mean by that is who has leadership roles within the society. Is it men or is it women? Now, Native Americans, for the most part, they're still a patriarchal society, but women have an expanded role. And so there's very few Native American societies that we consider true matriarchal societies where women are in control. But women do have some tribal leadership positions, and that's important to understand as well. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that women do take an active role in jobs, primarily farming. When there's a farming-based society, women are going to be doing the farming. They're also going to be doing a lot of the craft work, like the pottery, making clothing. Men primarily are out there, they're doing hunting, they're warriors. And so you have hunting, fishing, warriors, and that's kind of like their version of gender roles. And that's important to understand. Again, for viewing it again, European in juxtaposition with the Native Americans. So you want to understand the Native Americans set aside as themselves, just to understand their culture, their societies. Then you also want to always be able to compare Native Americans to one another. When we get into tomorrow, let's say, the Eastern Woodlands Indians to the Southwest Indians to the Great Plains Indians, but then also to European society, and how do they view each other differently, and why would that potentially cause problems, misunderstandings, misconceptions amongst one another. All right, that's going to be it for our first screencast. There'll be an assignment that goes with each screencast. Make sure you do your assignment handwritten on a piece of paper, and they'll be collected within the first week of school, okay? So there'll be a couple more screencasts to come, so make sure you check in and you do all of your assignments.